stubborn stone, uniform particles, well-defined water chestnuts. They have become fine, smooth and black-yellow after being cut by the wind for thousands of years. These once huge stones were gradually separated and crushed by nature. People now call these once majestic boulders sand, and the ocean formed by these particles is called desert. These sands lie peacefully, not moving even if the wind does not blow, just like employees in the workplace today. And somewhere in these grains of sand, a yellowed note was half hidden. After 10 years of being buried and blown around, it miraculously remained on the surface. In the summer of 2014, a man picked up this note somewhere in the Taklamakan Desert. The man's eyes were cold and firm. He looked at the mighty team of thousands of people behind him and said to the beautiful woman next to him, "Weiyang, tell the exploration team to rest here, and tell Hans Hen to double the checkpoints tonight. We are very close to him." The woman agreed softly, then turned to settle the huge team. The man picked up the walkie-talkie in his hand and tuned to a channel that could not be traced by satellites. He whispered to the audience over there, "Earl, the people over there should wait for the sun to go down. Also, please inform the elves and dragons. If you detect any new clues, you must notify me as soon as possible. Remember, you must avoid the magic interference of the Dark Wizard." After that, the man sighed slightly and opened the fragile note, which seemed to be broken at any time. The note contained a lot of content, and the handwriting looked very sloppy due to its age. The man could only squint his eyes and read it with difficulty. "I don't want anyone to see this note. If you do, I hope you are just an ignorant traveler passing through this ominous place, not a descendant of us. If you don't know what I wrote until now, then you can just throw this note away casually." The man shook his head with emotion and continued reading. 1,329 people. In 3 years, we have experienced countless disasters. I have witnessed all kinds of weird events happening around me. I am now in a very dangerous place. If you read this note in the same place as me, then your current situation must also be perilous. Please be careful. In 1993, we stepped into this desert with full confidence. Looking back, I was too naive at that time. I naively thought that my team of thousands of people would lose at most half of the purpose of our trip. 3 years have passed, and I look at the few hundred people left in front of me with regret. We have achieved almost nothing in the past 3 years, and all I have done is postpone the catastrophe that should have come last year for 20 years. After everything I have seen in my life, I could not have predicted that the situation at that time would make people desperate to such a weird degree. The employees in the team, whether they were fierce ghosts, big ghosts, or even ghost emperors, could not predict their own life or death at all. I began to wonder if that guy had any weaknesses. Words spirits, realms, not even magic and dragon's flames could kill him. I don't know what kind of abilities he has. This mystery may accompany me to death. 20 years later, if I am still alive, I will come here again to complete my unfulfilled obligations. If I am no longer here, then if you read this note, please remember one thing. Never believe the so-called companions around you. It is possible that everyone around you is a ghost. Han Wei-Chen, in the late autumn of 1996. After reading the note, the man looked back with slight disappointment at the team that had gradually begun to set up camp. The woman who had just gone to dispatch slowly came back. She looked at the man in front of her and asked with slight concern, "Si-Chen, is everything okay?" "It's nothing." The man shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Don't worry about me, Weiyang. Do you remember? 10 years ago, I had nothing, but with the death threats and weird experiences again and again, I gained fame, status, and you. When I really couldn't let go of all these magnificent achievements, fate just wanted me to go through this journey of death. I must have felt the same as me here 20 years ago, my father. My father once said, there is no experience that you can avoid. The woman smiled bitterly. Once you experience it, then go on with awe and gratitude for it. My father has always believed in cause and effect, and I have inherited his belief. All of these are disasters that we are born to survive, and we just have to face them with a smile. The man looked at the black clouds in the distant sky. Weiyong, karma is just an excuse to disguise one's suffering. I firmly believe that destiny can be firmly grasped in my hands, just like the decision I made when I saw a ghost for the first time. Chapter 1, Origin. Time, 2004. ZH City has a pleasant climate and warm air. It is a city suitable for people to live in. People here live at a slow pace, without too much glitz and glamour, and rarely see intrigues in the workplace. Although they are not as wealthy as the majority of first-tier cities in China, they are by no means associated with the word poverty. Logically speaking, this seemingly peaceful city will never have enough supernatural events to enrich this work, but the word weird often seems to prefer to appear in these seemingly peaceful places. In the middle of the night, 12 o'clock has just struck. Han Siken sat alone in front of the desk in his room. In front of him was his laptop, the screen covered with business proposal manuscripts. Han Siken has just graduated from university. Although he lives in a leisurely city, for a graduate who has just started working for less than half a year, working overtime is still an indispensable duty. Tiesk, how long will this take? Han Siken said to himself. He sighed, looked up at the dark community outside the window, frowned and closed his eyes and sighed. I am just a poor guy working overtime, and there is not a single ghost in this damn place. Han Siken just moved into this community last week. The rent is reasonable, the location is reasonable, and the network is reasonable. The combination of these three factors allowed him to move out of the previous shared apartment and live in it. Han Siken lay back on the chair, closed his bloodshot eyes, and rubbed his temples. This was his habitual way of relieving fatigue, lying on the back of a chair and massaging his temples. He believes that this moment of relaxation can help him regain a little strength from the heavy work tasks. Buzz, buzz, dash. A vibration of the cell phone brought Han Siken back from his thoughts. He looked at the caller ID on his Nokia and answered the call helplessly. If you have anything to say, just say it, John Doe. I'm at work. Don't worry, brother. Of course I'm calling you because it's a big deal. On the other end of the phone, a young and handsome man with a literary temperament smiled. What big thing can happen to you, kid? Apart from writing ghost stories about you and posting them in newspapers every day, you also spend time looking at girls on the street. Han Siken smiled. I'm not going to lie to you this time. Come to my house quickly. Don't you believe in ghosts and gods? I'll show you something good. Li Si said on the other end of the phone. Han Siken is a pure atheist. He never believed in anything related to ghosts and gods. Han Siken did not wear a cross, did not like Buddhist bead bracelets, and would not hang a demon mirror at the door of his home. This disapproval of feudal superstition comes from an incident that Han Siken experienced when he was a child. Child, you must remember, never believe in ghosts. Never let your curiosity be aroused by any weird things. These were the last words Han Sichen's mother said to him on the sickbed 8 years ago. Han Siken could never forget the scene at that time. His mother, lying on her side on the hospital bed, her face seemed to have been taken away by all the moisture in the sand and dust. She held Han Sichen's small hands with both arms, and the circles of red tooth marks seemed to have been chewed by some strange beast. The yellowing and ulceration, Han Siken, who was only 14 years old at the time, could not explain it with what he saw. Okay, let's go out. You still have things to do. Han Sichen's father patted his son, who was already crying. Han Siken walked out of the door silently. He stood in the corridor of the hospital and looked through the small window on the ward door with tears in his eyes. He was surprised to see something unusual and strange, a green, elephant-like ape lying on his mother's body and roaring continuously. Randomly, this terrifying scene disappeared again. No matter how hard Han Siken rubbed his eyes or looked hard, the ape never appeared again. Until that night, his mother died in extreme pain. Han Siken has not dared to disobey his father since he was a child. In his memory, his father was an unsmiling person, and his status seemed to be very high. Many strange faces would appear every day in his childhood home. Han Siken, squatting in the corner playing with building blocks, could feel from the words of the conversations between these strangers and his father that, without exception, these people came to ask his father for help. Later, Han Siken gradually understood that the job his father was engaged in seemed to be very special. This job was so special that he had to send his wife, Han Sichen's mother, into the arms of death. As Han Siken grew up, he gradually realized that his mother's death was inseparable from his father's work. The emergence of this concept gradually changed Han Sichen's attitude towards his father. He once had great respect for his superior father, but as the years passed, this reverence and admiration gradually dissipated into Han Sichen's hatred. Han Siken felt that the person who killed his mother must be his father. Although Han Sichen's hatred was not expressed, he still maintained the same attitude as usual when he saw his father, saying hello, eating, and chatting aimlessly. But Han Siken and his father already had an insurmountable threshold in their hearts. This experience made Han Siken miss his mother so much that Han Siken clearly practiced the last words his mother said to him for 8 years. Never believe in any ghosts and gods. I don't believe it anyway. It's useless for you to ask me to see it. I'll hang up first, Han Siken said to Li Si on the other end of the phone. Wait a minute, Li Si suddenly shouted on the other end of the phone. Don't you want to know why your mother died? What did you say? Han Sichen's expression suddenly revealed an indescribable anger. This expression is an extremely annoyed expression that only appears when someone touches the most vulnerable part of his heart. Don't challenge my bottom line. Han Siken gritted his teeth and said to the phone one word at a time. If you dare to mention this matter again, we will stop being friends for 20 years, and we will end our friendship. I know this is your reaction. Li Si on the other end of the phone stopped smiling. But I do have something that you want to see. I understand your bottom line, but I am convinced that you must see this thing. Han Siken heard Li Si's firmness on the other end of the phone. He understood Li Si. Although he usually seemed naughty and had no integrity, once he got serious, it must be some kind of principal issue. I believe you once. Han Siken hesitated for a long time, finally closed his eyes, sighed and said, I'll be there later. Okay, I'll wait for you. There was a hang-up sound on the other end of the phone. Han Siken was a little sad. He closed his eyes, leaned back on the chair, and murmured, Damn it, am I, a person who doesn't believe in ghosts and gods, finally going to come into contact with these ghosts? After that, Han Siken opened his eyes. His eyes were still dark. Guess, who am I? An abrupt sound, as if emerging from thick, foul-smelling mud, slowly flowed into Han Sichen's ears. What the hell is this? Han Siken suddenly froze on the spot. His body trembled slowly. His hands and feet were cold. This fear came from the most cowardly fear deep in the human heart, the fear of the unknown. Guess, who am I? Guess. The disgusting voice was still there, and Han Siken finally felt something strange. His eyes were not invisible, but were wrapped by a pair of hands that felt nothing. He tried to twist his head, but found that the hand was extremely strong and hugged his head tightly in an instant. At this moment, Hans Sicken could not even break free. Even if his head was twisted off, there would be no suspense. Who am I? Guess who I am? The voice seemed to come from another world, but it penetrated into Hans Sichen's ears very clearly. You are, I don't know. Hans Sicken calmed down in this desperate situation. Although he usually remained neutral between ghost theory and atheism, he never thought that he would personally experience such a supernatural event. Fortunately, Hans Sicken had seen some horror and movies. He knew that if he had to fight hard, he would definitely not be the opponent of this thing. So he planned to figure out his current situation through the method he trusted most at the moment: communication. You don't know, so you have to guess, the voice replied. Can't you give me some tips? Hans Sicken asked. Okay, I'm female. The voice replied slowly. How dare you say you're a woman with a voice that makes you feel constipated? Besides, who you are has nothing to do with whether you're a boy or a girl. Hans Sicken scolded him angrily. Of course, these were just what he was saying. Hans Sicken calmed down and continued to ask, can you be more specific? For example, where are you from? What is your relationship with me? And why did you come to me? There was no reply from the voice. Just when Hans Sicken was about to continue asking questions, he suddenly felt a pain in his eyes. The two hands that were just gently pressing his eyes suddenly tightened, and the voice came again. I don't know where I come from. My relationship with you. It was you who called me out, and you asked me, are you teasing me? I understand. Sorry, I was guessing. Hans Sicken quickly explained. He didn't want his young eyes to be crushed alive by these hands before they were blinded by computer radiation. But at least the conversation just now was fruitful. At least Hans Sicken knew that this unknown object was summoned by himself. After listening to Hans Sichen's begging for mercy, the voice's strength slowly relaxed. Then go on. Guess who I am? Hans Sicken tried hard to recall the ghost stories he had heard in his life to see if he had ever experienced anything like this. Although he also read some books about strange powers and delusions on weekdays, he didn't take them seriously. These books were just tools for Hans Sichen's leisure time, and he would forget them after reading them. At this moment, Hans Sicken didn't know how much he wanted to slap himself. Damn it! She probably won't be happy if I'd beg this ghost to let me watch it for half an hour or search it on Google. Wait, this ghost. Hans Sicken was suddenly shocked. He remembered a taboo his grandfather told him when he was a child. When you are in a place you are not familiar with, you must never say 3 words ghost in the same sentence with your eyes closed. Otherwise, you will attract an eyeless minion. Is this the thing that blindfolded my eyes? Hans Sicken continued to recall his grandfather's words. If you are really unfortunate enough to meet her, then you must not say her name. The eyeless lady will ask you to say her name, and once you say it, she will gouge out your eyes. Hans Sicken was glad that his brain was still working well, and he had not forgotten this point. But even if I don't say her name, she still grabs me. Do you want me to spend the whole night with her? Hans Sicken thought helplessly. Why don't you tell me? The disgusting voice of the eyeless man sounded again. This time, this terrifying voice was accompanied by a cold pain that slowly spread from Hans Sichen's eyes. He felt that his eyes were being slowly frozen. This abnormality continued to be mixed with the terrifying voice. This is the last chance to say it, or you will freeze to death. Damn it, I don't have a girlfriend yet, Hans Sicken thought angrily. Although I'm still lonely and cold, it's not as cold as it is now. It seemed that the cold had stimulated his head. Hans Sicken suddenly recalled the last words his grandfather said about the eyeless man. You shout out the word, return loudly, and stretch out your hands to give a high five, and then you have a chance to drive the eyeless man away. That's enough. I don't have the patience anymore. Seeing that Han Siken remained silent, Wu Yanling raised his voice, and the cold feeling instantly amplified. The eyeless man let out a stomach-churning roar. You will die here. You must die here. You didn't say it. Only a fool would say that. Almost at the same time, Han Siken opened his hands in an exaggerated manner and roared, "Return," and slapped his hands together fiercely. For a moment, I felt nothing. Han Siken only felt that the darkness in front of him suddenly dissipated with a burst of fatigue. He looked hazily at his clean and tidy room and slowly fell to the ground unconscious. When Han Siken regained consciousness, it was already 3 poles high on the second day. Of course, as the only victim of this ghost encounter, he was late for work, and the manuscript that needed to be handed in today was not completed. Han Siken, who was yelled at by his boss, sat dejectedly at his desk and sent a text message. He asked Li Si what happened yesterday. Although these experiences cannot be used as talking points to show off in front of friends, at least Han Siken, who is surviving the disaster, hopes to know more about what kind of thing this blind man he encountered is. Soon, the message received a reply, and the full text is as follows. He has no eyes and belongs to the 100 ghosts. The 100 demons are ranked 98th. They're stronger than ordinary people and can create cold air with their hands. But because it has no eyes and cannot see, it can only rely on the human spirit, waiting to be summoned by. Close your eyes and say a sentence containing 3 ghost words and ask the summoner for his name. If there is no result, the summoner will be killed. If asked, the summoner's eyes will be taken away. The 100 ghosts are divided into 3 categories according to their strength: the most advanced, big ghosts, the weaker, fire ghosts, and the weakest, dragon ghosts. Generally speaking, the ghosts are very unpopular among the 100 ghosts and are bullied by ghosts superior to them everywhere, so they have the heaviest resentment among the 100 ghosts. This resentment that they had nowhere to vent was spread on humans, so killing people without any reason was usually the work of ghosts. The word return is extremely frightening to the eyeless ghost. Because she is a ghost, she must respect the carrier she relies on, and return is exactly the word's spirit relative to the 3 ghosts. If a human shouts the word return, the eyeless man must respect this instruction as soon as possible. If he refuses to leave within a few seconds, he will be abandoned by the spirit of the word, and his soul will be gone. And shouting for refuge is not enough. The eyeless minion can still kill the summoner in a short time. In order to ensure greater safety, the summoner must give a strong high five when shouting for refuge. As a high five, in Tibetan Buddhism, it represents a fleeting moment. This moment is called impermanence, and impermanence is a very representative big ghost. Of course, big ghosts are much more frightening to ghosts who can only cling to certain things, so they naturally scare away the blind ghosts. Han Siken shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seemed that he was really in a critical situation. I used other ghosts to scare away the blind people. It seems that ghosts are divided into 3 religions just like humans. He sent another text message. Are you